The attempted invasion, the Zinthari Concordat, had subjugated 273 civilizations across 12 star systems. Their method was elegant, efficient, and utterly devastating. Telepathic domination on a planetary scale. No species had ever successfully resisted their mental influence until Earth. High Commander Varix materialized in Central Park on a crisp autumn morning, her translucent form briefly shimmering before solidifying into a humanoid shape that would pass casual inspection. Her three-member elite subjugation team appeared moments later, arranging themselves in a triangular formation that had heralded the fall of civilizations far more advanced than these primitive humans. Begin preliminary scan, Varix transmitted telepathically. Standard protocol. Target density is high. Estimated subjugation time. 3 planetary rotations. Specialist Nera, their cognitive cartographer, extended her consciousness outward like an invisible net cast over the bustling park. Her task was simple: map the basic neural architecture of the species, identify control points, and establish the mathematical models for mass subjugation. Curious, she transmitted after several moments. Their brains appear structurally simple, yet the thought patterns are unusually chaotic. Varix dismissed the observation. All species present variations. Proceed with the first probe. The first human target was a street performer playing violin near the fountain. His mind should have been focused on the music, making him an ideal candidate for initial infiltration. Nara inserted the standard control tendril, a psychic construct designed to establish command protocols within a subject's consciousness. The violinist missed a note, then another. He lowered his instrument, shook his head vigorously, then smiled at his audience. "Sorry, folks, lost my train of thought there." He resumed playing, his melody actually more complex than before. "Control failure," Nara reported, confusion evident in her transmission. The subject's mind rejected the implant. "Impossible," Varix replied. "Adjust parameters and try again." The second attempt targeted a cluster of humans. A tour group of 12 gathered around their guide. The Zinthari had found that group subjugation often proved more efficient as social species tended to amplify control protocols through their natural bonds. All 12 humans simultaneously reached for their heads. The tour guide paused mid-sentence, blinking rapidly. A child of perhaps 8 years began to cry. But within moments, their lives resumed as if nothing had happened, the brief mental intrusion apparently forgotten. "This is unprecedented," transmitted Ixel, the team's veteran subjugator. "Their minds aren't just resisting. They're actively ejecting our control mechanisms." Varix's silver eyes narrowed as she processed this information. In 9 centuries of service to the Concordat, she had never witnessed a failed initial subjugation. "We need more data. Disperse and attempt individual probes across different human demographics. Meet back here at Solar Apex." The team dissolved into invisibility, each member targeting different sections of the sprawling city. Nara chose a university lecture hall where humans engaged in knowledge transfer, typically a vulnerable state for most species. She slipped into the back of a neuroscience lecture, appreciating the irony. Her target was the lecturer, a human female approximately 40 years old whose mind should have been fully focused on her material, an ideal state for infiltration. Nara waited until the professor paused to change her visual display, then launched a psychic probe. The professor stopped mid-gesture, adjusted her glasses, and looked directly toward the back of the room where Nara's invisible form stood. "That's interesting," she said to her class of 30 students. "I just had the strangest sensation, almost like an external thought trying to integrate with my own." Nara froze. No species had ever consciously detected a Zinthari probe. "It relates to what we're discussing today," the professor continued. "The theory of cognitive resilience, how our brains naturally resist external manipulation. Some researchers propose that human consciousness evolved specifically to maintain autonomous thought patterns despite external influence." Nara retreated, her telepathic senses reeling. The human hadn't just rejected her control. She had somehow perceived it, analyzed it, and was now incorporating it into her teaching. Across the city, similar scenarios played out. Ixul attempted to subjugate a construction worker, only to find the man's mind was a labyrinth of technical calculations, personal worries, song lyrics, and sports statistics all occurring simultaneously. The chaotic mental environment made establishing control points impossible. The third team member, Zenith, targeted a child on a playground, usually the easiest subjects across all species. The girl looked directly at Zenith's invisible form and asked her friend if she could see the shimmery person watching them. By sunset, when the team reconvened, their confusion had transformed into something the Zinthari rarely experienced: concern. "Report," Varix commanded. "Humans appear to operate multiple simultaneous thought streams," Nara explained, projecting a three-dimensional model of the human neural architecture she had managed to map. Where most species have organized linear cognitive patterns, humans think in parallel, sometimes contradictory ways. They can hold opposing beliefs simultaneously. Their emotions don't just influence thought. They create entirely new thought structures. Worse, added Ixul, they appear to possess natural mental defenses. When we attempt insertion, their minds automatically generate countermeasures, not consciously, but as an inherent function. Varix absorbed this troubling information. "We need a direct comprehensive scan. I will perform it myself." The team exchanged concerned glances through their telepathic link. A comprehensive scan was typically reserved for species that had already been subjugated. Performing one on an uncontrolled subject carried risks for both scanner and subject. Varix identified her target: a woman sitting alone on a park bench, apparently absorbed in a small electronic device. She approached in her human disguise and sat beside her. "Beautiful evening," she offered, using verbal communication as a distraction. The woman looked up, smiled politely. "Yes, it is." In that moment of connection, Varix launched the most powerful psychic probe in her considerable arsenal, a complete neural infiltration designed to map every aspect of the human's consciousness. What she encountered defied all Zinthari understanding of sentient cognition. The woman's mind wasn't just thinking, it was dreaming, remembering, planning, worrying, hoping, and creating all at once. Beneath her current conscious thoughts about dinner plans and an upcoming work presentation lay layers of subconscious activity, childhood memories mingling with fictional scenarios, emotional processing happening alongside logical problem-solving, creative impulses bubbling up through practical considerations. Most shocking of all, the woman's mind recognized the intrusion immediately. Not consciously, but at some fundamental level, her thoughts began to shift, to evade Varix's probe like water flowing around stones. Before Varix could establish any control point, the human mind had reconfigured itself, building psychic barriers from pure imagination. Then something unprecedented happened. The woman's consciousness pushed back. "Are you okay?" she asked, looking concerned at Varix's suddenly rigid posture. "You went pale there for a second." But Varix could barely hear the words. Her own psyche was being examined, tentatively but unmistakably, by the human mind she had attempted to infiltrate, not with the precision of Zinthari telepathy, but with something equally powerful: human empathy. "I'm fine," Varix managed to say, standing abruptly. "Must be the jet lag." She retreated quickly, her telepathic defenses fully engaged for the first time in centuries. Back at their concealed base of operations, Varix called an emergency council. "These humans," she transmitted to her team, "possess a form of mental architecture we've never encountered. Their consciousness isn't centralized like other species. It's distributed, redundant, and in constant flux." "How is this possible?" asked Zenith. "Every sentient species develops along predictable cognitive pathways." "Their evolution diverged," Nara suggested, reviewing her data. "Their planet has extraordinary biodiversity and climate variation. Their ancestors survived by adaptation rather than specialization. This appears to have shaped their minds as well. They are cognitively adaptable in ways we've never seen. Troubling. Ixal transmitted, but not insurmountable. We should signal the Concordat for a full subjugation fleet. Varix hesitated, something rare for a high commander. Before we escalate, I want to understand why their minds resist us so effectively. There's something fundamental we're missing. The answer came in an unexpected way. As the team continued their observations over the next day, monitoring human communications and attempting more subtle forms of influence, they began experiencing unusual symptoms, flashes of imagination, unprompted emotional responses, dreams during rest cycles. Something is wrong with our neural safeguards, Zenith reported with alarm. I'm experiencing thought patterns that aren't my own. Not wrong, Varix realized with growing astonishment. The humans are affecting us. Not consciously, but their mental resistance has evolved into a form of passive counter-influence. Impossible, Ixal insisted. No species has ever reverse-influenced the Zinthari. But the evidence was becoming undeniable. The longer they remained among humans, attempting to penetrate their consciousness, the more the team's own telepathic architecture was being subtly rewired. They were beginning to think more like humans, less linear, more creative, more individual. For a species that had evolved as a collective consciousness, this presented an existential threat. We must withdraw and reassess, Varix decided, already composing her report to the Concordat. These humans aren't just resistant to subjugation. They represent a new category of consciousness, one potentially dangerous to our own. As they prepared to depart Earth, Varix found herself experiencing something entirely new, curiosity independent of the Concordat's objectives. She wondered what humans might teach the Zinthari, rather than what the Zinthari might take from humans. Such individual curiosity would once have been immediately suppressed by her neural conditioning. The fact that it persisted indicated how profoundly human consciousness had already affected her. Just before dematerialization, Varix made a decision that would change the course of interstellar relations. She left behind their comprehensive findings about human consciousness, in a form humans would eventually discover and understand. Not as a warning, but as an invitation. The cognitive revolution. 6 months after their initial reconnaissance mission to Earth, the Zinthari Concordat faced an unprecedented situation. The subjugation team sent to assess human telepathic vulnerability had returned fundamentally changed. Their collective consciousness partially fragmented, their thoughts contaminated with human-like individuality and creativity. The Concordat's overmind, a vast telepathic network comprising the unified consciousness of billions of Zinthari, convened its first emergency council in 3 millennia. High Commander Varix, the collective voice resonated through her mind. Explain how your team was compromised by these humans. Varix stood alone in the great amphitheater of thought, her consciousness laid bare before her species' leadership. But something had changed within her, a newfound resilience born from her brief exposure to human minds. The humans were not what we expected, she transmitted, sharing her memories directly. Their consciousness operates on principles we've never encountered. They don't think linearly. They think in parallel, contradictory, creative ways that our telepathic systems cannot effectively map or control. Murmurs of disbelief rippled through the collective. In 12,000 years of expansion, the Zinthari had never failed to subjugate a species. More significantly, Varix continued, prolonged telepathic contact with humans appears to affect our own consciousness. They possess a form of passive counter-influence that stimulates individuality, creativity, and emotional independence in Zinthari minds. The collective recoiled at this. Individuality was considered a primitive evolutionary stage, one the Zinthari had transcended eons ago in favor of their superior hive mind. This contamination is unacceptable, the Overmind declared. We will dispatch a full subjugation fleet. If their minds cannot be controlled, their species will be eliminated. The risk they present to Zinthari cognitive harmony is too great. For the first time in her 9 centuries of existence, Varix felt something stronger than her loyalty to the collective: doubt. With respect, she transmitted, "I believe destruction would be a grave error. The humans possess mental attributes that could be studied, perhaps even integrated in controlled ways to strengthen the Concordat." The amphitheater fell silent. Such independent judgment from a single Zinthari was unprecedented. "Your exposure to human consciousness has compromised your integration more severely than we realized," the Overmind finally responded. "You will be reconditioned. The subjugation fleet departs in 3 cycles." Meanwhile on Earth, Dr. Eleanor Chen, the neuroscience professor who had sensed Nara's telepathic probe during her lecture, had spent months pursuing what she initially believed was just an interesting research question. Why had she experienced the sensation of an external thought attempting to integrate with her own? Her investigation had led her down unexpected paths, connecting with others who reported similar experiences during the same week: a construction worker, a violinist, a child on a playground, and most significantly, a software engineer named Michael Okafor who had had a strange encounter with a pale woman on a park bench. "It felt like she was looking through me rather than at me," Michael explained during their first meeting at Eleanor's university lab. "And then, for just a moment, I could somehow sense her emotions: confusion, shock, and something like fear." Eleanor had brought together these 5 individuals to conduct a series of experiments, attaching advanced EEG arrays to monitor their brain activity. What she discovered astonished her. All 5 showed unusual patterns in their theta and gamma waves, patterns that literature suggested were theoretically associated with telepathic potential in humans. "Whatever happened to us?" Eleanor told the small group. "It changed something in our neural architecture. We're detecting and processing information beyond normal sensory channels." What none of them realized was that Varix's parting gift, the comprehensive data about human consciousness she had hidden on Earth, was gradually being discovered by human researchers around the world. Disguised as anomalous data patterns in various scientific measurements, these fragments were slowly being pieced together by the global scientific community. As the Zinthari subjugation fleet approached Earth's solar system, something unprecedented occurred. Eleanor and her small group of telepathically awakened humans began experiencing vivid, shared dreams of alien minds approaching with hostile intent. "We need to warn someone," the violinist insisted during an emergency meeting of their group. "Warn who?" Michael countered. "That we're having bad dreams about aliens. We'd be laughed out of every government office on the planet." Eleanor wasn't so certain. "The neural synchronicity we're experiencing suggests this is more than imagination. If what we're sensing is real, we need to find a way to prepare." Their opportunity came sooner than expected. As the subjugation fleet entered Earth's orbit, their advanced telepathic scanning systems began synchronizing for the planetary assault, a process that created a detectable telepathic surge. Across Earth, thousands of humans with heightened sensitivity experienced sudden headaches, vivid hallucinations, or inexplicable fear. Eleanor's group, now prepared and monitoring their neural activity, detected the pattern immediately. "It's happening," Eleanor announced to her colleagues. "And it's not just us feeling it anymore." What followed was humanity's first unified telepathic response, not organized or even conscious, but powerful nonetheless. As the Zinthari began their preliminary scan of Earth's population, they encountered not just the chaotic individual minds that had confounded the reconnaissance team, but a new phenomenon: resonance between sensitive human minds creating telepathic feedback loops. Aboard the command vessel, Fleet Commander Thrix observed with growing alarm as his telepaths began reporting disorientation and system failures. "Their minds are connecting," one telepath reported before collapsing. "Not like ours, not unified, but reinforcing each other's natural barriers." Thrix had been warned about human cognitive uniqueness, but had dismissed Varix's reports as contaminated by exposure. Now, facing the reality of a planetary population whose minds actively resisted and even counterattacked when probed, He recognized the threat. On Earth, Eleanor and her team were working frantically to understand what was happening. Their modest lab had become a crisis center as more sensitives found their way there. Drawn by a shared telepathic awareness they couldn't yet control but intuitively followed. "The patterns are repeating," Michael observed, analyzing the EEG data. "It's like our brains are instinctively creating countermeasures against these intrusions." Eleanor nodded. "And the more they try to scan us, the stronger our resistance becomes. It's like a mental immune response." In orbit, the Zintheri fleet remained paralyzed. Their standard protocols had failed catastrophically, with over 30% of their telepaths now in protective comas, overwhelmed by human counter-influence. "We must proceed with physical intervention," Fricks decided. "If we cannot control their minds, we will eliminate the threat conventionally." As the fleet prepared kinetic weapons, a surprising communication interrupted their preparations, a focused telepathic broadcast originating from Earth, crude but effective, carrying a simple message: "We know you're there. We want to talk." The source was Eleanor's lab, where the gathered sensitives had managed, through trial and error, to combine their emerging abilities into a makeshift telepathic transmitter. "This is Dr. Eleanor Chen of Earth," she projected, focusing her thoughts with an intensity that left her physically exhausted. "We understand you've been attempting to influence our minds. We propose discussion instead of conflict." The unprecedented nature of this communication, a supposedly non-telepathic species initiating telepathic contact, shocked the Zintheri command structure. More concerning was the implication. If humans could develop functional telepathy merely through exposure to Zintheri influence, what other capabilities might they rapidly evolve? After intense deliberation, Fricks made a decision that would change the course of Zintheri history. Rather than risk further exposure or escalation, he would meet with these humans directly. The landing party materialized outside Eleanor's lab, causing initial panic among government forces that had begun to gather as unexplained phenomena multiplied worldwide. Through hasty telepathic communication, Eleanor managed to secure a brief window for dialogue. Face to face with actual aliens, the human team struggled to maintain their composure. The Zintheri appeared almost human, but with distinctly silver eyes, seamless pale skin, and an unnerving stillness. "You have caused considerable difficulty for the Concordat," Fricks stated without preamble, using verbal communication rather than risking further telepathic contact. "We were simply defending ourselves," Eleanor replied. "You came to our world with the intention of controlling our minds." "It is the natural order," Fricks explained. "Advanced species subjugate lesser ones. Your resistance was unexpected." Michael stepped forward. "Maybe you should reconsider your definition of advanced. Controlling others doesn't seem particularly evolved to us." This simple statement, challenging the fundamental basis of Zintheri civilization, created visible discomfort among the aliens. For a species that had defined advancement solely through telepathic dominance, the suggestion that their entire value system might be flawed was deeply unsettling. "What do you propose?" Fricks asked, his certainty visibly wavering. "Partnership," Eleanor suggested. "Your people clearly have technology and knowledge we don't. We have ways of thinking that are new to you. Instead of trying to control each other, we could learn from each other." As they negotiated, something remarkable was occurring throughout the Zintheri fleet. Extended exposure to human thought patterns, even through their failed subjugation attempt, was causing a cascading effect in the Zintheri collective consciousness. Individual thoughts, creative impulses, and independent questioning were emerging throughout their ranks, small ripples at first, then waves of individualized consciousness. The Overmind, detecting this spreading contamination, ordered an immediate withdrawal. But Fricks, experiencing his own awakening individuality, made an unprecedented choice. He disobeyed. "The humans represent not a threat to be eliminated," he transmitted to the collective, "but a mirror revealing the limitations of our own evolution. Our pursuit of perfect unity has cost us the strength that comes from diversity of thought. His rebellion triggered a schism within the Zintheri Concordat, the first in its history. Those whose consciousness had been touched by human thought patterns chose to remain and learn, while others retreated, fearful of further contamination. 1 year later, a remarkable exchange program was underway. Human scientists worked alongside Zintheri telepaths, exploring the unique properties of human consciousness while learning controlled telepathic techniques. The Zintheri who chose to stay experienced the exhilarating freedom of individual thought while teaching humans about the benefits of greater mental connection. Eleanor and Varix, now restored to her position and freed from reconditioning, co-led the joint research initiative. We believe telepathic unity was the pinnacle of evolution, Varix explained during a conference presentation. What humans have shown us is that cognitive diversity, the ability to think in contradictory, creative, even chaotic ways, creates a resilience and adaptability that perfect unity cannot match. And what the Zintheri have shown us, Eleanor added, is that our minds are capable of far more connection than we ever imagined, without sacrificing the individuality we value. Together, they had discovered a middle path, neither the isolated individuality that had defined human consciousness, nor the absolute collective that had limited Zintheri evolution, but something new. Connected independence, unified diversity. As Earth joined the wider galactic community, humans became known not as conquerors or the conquered, but as teachers of a new cognitive paradigm. The species whose unbreakable minds had transformed the nature of consciousness itself across the stars. The Zintheri had arrived seeking subjects. They departed having found equals, and in the process, rediscovered parts of themselves they never knew were missing.